Today's lesson is going to be about using Microsoft Word to type math. So first I want to sort of start with our learning target by sort of setting the stage for what it is that we're going to be doing. By the end of this lesson, you're going to know how to add several basic math expressions to your documents in Microsoft Word and be able to use shortcuts to add those elements quickly to a document. So what I'm specifically going to be covering in this lesson is first making sure that everyone has access to Microsoft Word 365. And how to install that. Second, we might not need to do that second one actually, but knowing about the keyboard shortcut for inserting an equation. And then the third part, the main part of this video, is about doing some operations using this equation editor that exists within Microsoft Word. And so I'm going to sort of keep moving things along. So the first thing that we need to do is I need to make sure that you have Microsoft Word 365 installed on your computer. So if you've already got that, you can probably skip forward a little bit in this. But one thing I do want to mention is, before you install Word, or maybe you already have it installed, but you're like, oh, but I use Google Docs for everything. So before we do this, I want to mention, why would we use Word instead of Docs? I'll be really honest. I like using Docs for a lot of things. Docs is really, really, really great for sharing documents, but as a mathematician, as a math teacher, I find that the equation editing capabilities of Google Docs is just not anywhere near as good as Microsoft Word is. And given that everyone gets free access to Microsoft Word through our school district, there's sort of no reason for us not to use Word instead of Docs here. Again, it's a little bit easier to share Google Docs documents as opposed to Word, but the equation editing is just so much better in Word on so many different levels. So that's the reason that I'm going to be teaching you this and showing you this in Word as opposed to through Docs. So if you've already got Word, great. You can sort of skip this and meet me in the next part. But if you don't have Word installed, what you want to do is you'll want to go, on a web browser, go to office.com. And that basically takes you to Microsoft's Office website. There should be a spot there where you can log in, and you should automatically have an account through them, through our school district. So when I did it anyway, I was able to log in with my school email address and the password. And from there, you can download and install Word. If you want to install Excel and PowerPoint and some of the other things, you're welcome to, but all we're really going to need for this is Word, so feel free to do just that part. If you're not able to log in with your email address and password, you could try going through the process of setting up an account and build the account using your school email address. My understanding is that basically Microsoft makes their Office suite available for free to all students. So through that process, you should be able to get access to Microsoft Word. If you have any trouble with that, let me know, and I'll do my best to help you with that and get that for you. But you will need Microsoft Word to be able to move forward with what we're about to be doing. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is speed. I think that for a lot of people, the idea that you could type math on a computer is like, oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. It sounds like that would take way longer than just writing it out would. And I mean, maybe I can probably write on paper faster than I can type my math. But I'll tell you what, it is way neater on a computer. And I've been able to get a lot of speed in this by one, practicing it, and two, using keyboard shortcuts. There are a lot of shortcuts that you can use. And I want to take some time to show you those things. So on my version of Word, which I'm using a Mac, I'm using Word version 16.49. I found that by just clicking up in the corner and finding the thing. Anyway, for me, the shortcut is Control and then the equals button. And so when I type Control and equals, it pops up a little menu that says type equation here. So if you hit Control equals and it does that, yay. If you're on a Windows keyboard, it might be Alt and then equals. If you're having trouble finding that, you can actually, on your Word menu, you can click on the Insert menu, and way down near the bottom, it'll say equation. And right next to that, there's actually a little shortcut symbol here that tells me that it's going to be my up arrow and then equals. So if you're not seeing, if you can't figure out what your shortcut key is, you can probably see it there. Worst case scenario, you could click insert an equation, but I'm really, really, really hoping that everybody can find that shortcut key. And I've kind of mentioned this already, but I'm going to say it again. If you're going to be writing a document with lots of equations, learning the keyboard shortcuts is a really, really good way to save lots of time. There were some students of mine in the past who were working on things, and they'd be typing things out, and they knew how to use the equation editor, but they didn't know about keyboard shortcuts. And once I showed these to them, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this makes it so much better, so much faster." That's really what our lesson today is about. It's about efficiency. So as a person who types a lot of math, this whole lesson is one of those things that it takes some extra time to learn these shortcuts, but that little bit of invested time right now is going to save you a lot of time in the long run. So that's kind of what we're going for here. So at this point in this video, you should all have Microsoft Word installed, and you should all know what your keyboard shortcut is. If you can't find that keyboard shortcut to insert an equation, for me it's Control equals, for Windows it's Alt equals. Like I would say, pause the video, send me an email, and then if you want to come back and work through the video by just clicking insert and equation, you can do that. But at some point, getting that shortcut down is probably going to save you a lot of time. All right. Another thing that I sort of want to say about this equation menu. So when I type this Control equals and it brings up this, this menu pops up in the ribbon that says equation. So when you click on equation, it brings up this little ribbon. You'll notice there's tons and tons and tons of stuff up here. I mean, there's a bunch of symbols right here. You can even click the sideways arrow to get more symbols. You can click the down arrow to just bring, I think there's a down arrow. Yeah, you can click this little down arrow to like expand the menu down, and you can see all the symbols that are available. Every one of these things over here has like a little hidden menu underneath it with all kinds of stuff that you can do. This menu contains basically everything you'll ever need to write math expressions for any paper you're going to be writing. You could click through all of these options, but many, many, many of these structures or symbols have shortcuts. It would be really difficult for us to memorize all of the shortcuts that are here, but it probably won't take us very long to just memorize the ones that we need to write really simple papers. A quick note that I want to mention here about the spacebar. So hopefully you're following along with all of this. So a note about the spacebar. After you type in any of these shortcuts, you can use the spacebar to basically execute the shortcut. So I'll be talking more about shortcuts, but I'm going to go ahead and just do one really quick example right here. Let's say that you wanted to do like this delta symbol right here. Right? Actually, it looks like that's in the increment symbol. Let me use something different. Like this weird looking E symbol. It's called the element symbol. I don't know if you guys can see it. It might be too small on your screen, but it says element of and then like \in. So if I down here in my equation, if I type in \in, you'll notice it doesn't turn into that symbol. But after I've typed that, if I hit the space bar, it immediately turns into that symbol. So instead of me having to go up here and find it and click the symbol to put it in, I can just type \in space and boom, the thing appears on there. So if you're into using these shortcuts, as I hope that you will be, the space bar is sort of the thing you use to like execute or do the shortcut. So at this point, I'm sort of done with all of my background stuff. It's time to get into doing some equation editing. So let's move on and do this, right? Okay. So the first type of shortcut that I want to talk about is quickly entering exponents, which are sometimes called superscript, and subscript, so like the little numbers like underneath a thing. Okay, so again, you probably noticed anyway, when you were in this menu, there's a little thing over here where you can click the thing and then click on a superscript, and then you could click in the box and hit a Z, and then you could click in the box and hit a 3. But I don't know about you guys, but clicking that many times, it takes, it takes me longer to do that than it does to type some things on my keyboard. So if you want to do this quickly, to type an exponent, once you're in your equation editor, you just type the base that you want, z, and then you can type the caret button above 6, so shift 6, and then type your exponent, 3, and you're like, oh cool, like it's z to the third power. If you hit the spacebar to execute, it'll immediately put those things together and make it an exponent expression. Okay. Really, really similarly, if you wanted to do a subscript, like if I wanted this to be z sub 2, the shortcut for a subscript is to do the base, and then you use underscore. It's right above the dash button next to 0, so z underscore, and then if I wanted to make this z sub 5, you do z underscore 5, hit space, and it'll make it a subscript. Okay. One more thing I want to mention here before I let you guys do some of these practice things. If your superscript or your subscript is more than just one symbol, right? So suppose you wanted to do something like, so let's do this the long way. Suppose that you wanted to do something like z raised to the x plus 5 power, right? If you want to do a shortcut of that, if you try and do z to the x plus 5, oh man, the plus 5 lands down there. What you can do is you can do z raised to the parentheses, order of operations kind of, to the x plus 5 power. And you've got it all typed out there, and then it's like magic. When you hit the space button, it goes, boom, great, I'm going to take all that stuff and move it up into the exponent. Okay? So what I've now done here is I've sort of written out 5 examples that I want you to do. And I would really, really encourage you to practice using these shortcut keys, find out what works, find out what doesn't work. Some things are going to be a little bit frustrating. You might get all the way through and be like, oh, I messed this thing up. That's okay. Making those mistakes is part of this process. My bet is that you guys have not typed a lot of math in your lives. And so this is a new skill. It's going to take some time. So I would say pause the video. If you want to do all 5 of these and then come back and check with me, you can. I'm going to go ahead and walk through what my steps are going to be for each of these. If you want to do them one at a time and then come in and check in with me, that's fine too. Okay. Honestly, the first one I did is already been pretty quick. I do control and then equals to bring up my equation, and then z caret 3 space, and yay, we're done. Okay. For this next one, right, for 5x sub 1 raised to the 5th power, there's parentheses there. So bringing up my equation menu, control equals, I'll do parentheses 5x underscore 1, and then I'm going to put a space so that it like executes that, and then I'll close my other parentheses, and now I've got that thing. Now I want to put an exponent on that, so I'll now caret shift 6 raised to the 5th power, and when I hit space, boom, it goes through and executes that thing. Okay, I hope you guys are finding that this is fairly simple. If you're having trouble with something, I really hope that you'll either write it down in your notes. Oh no, why did my face pause down here? That's not cool. Oh man. Yeah, sometimes my face pauses in this thing. I wonder if I can bring myself back. Hold on. New movie recording. Is it going to bring me back? Yay, it brought me back. Larger than life. Okay, cool. Yay, I recovered. But no, I disappeared again. I'm clearly not super proficient at this. Hang on. Okay, there we go. I got myself back. I hope that these are simple and this hasn't been super hard for you guys so far. But I do want to take care and show you how to do these things. So if you're having an easy time with this, just keep going. If you need more guidance and want to go through these with me, that's fine. So, you know, control equals or alt equals to bring out the menu. Y equals, and I'm going to type this one kind of quick. 6x caret 2 space minus 5x plus 3y to the 7th. And there it is. Like, I hope you guys are seeing when you know these keyboard shortcuts and how they work, you can type stuff really fast. For this next one, there's a lot of subscripts here, and some of them have multiple parts, right? So I'm going to do f underscore n space equals f underscore, now I got to do parentheses n minus 1 space plus f parentheses, whoops, we all make mistakes, that's okay, minus 2 space. I'm not going to say a lot about it here, but those of you that know the Fibonacci sequence and know what the formula for it is, you might recognize I called this F because this is the recursive formula for the Fibonacci sequence. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. My last example is the PERT formula, which is continuously compounded exponential growth. This would be A equals P E raised. Now you might be wondering, do I need to do parentheses around the RT? I'd encourage you to experiment with it. When I do RT and hit space, sure enough, I'm able to do that there, probably because I didn't hit like a plus or some other sort of an operation that was going to execute in the middle. So now, the last thing I'd like you to ask you to do here, and I'm going to ask you to do this twice more through the course of this lesson, I want you to choose one of these 3 reflection prompts and spend, like, not a lot of time, just spend a couple minutes thinking about what you just learned. Like all of these things up here, was this a positive experience? Was it a negative experience? Was it exciting? So here are sort of my 3 options for reflection prompts. First, was any part of this exciting? Did you find yourself mentally or actually out loud saying like, whoa? If so, when? Why? Like what was it that was kind of exciting? Second, did you have trouble with any of these? What was the trouble that you had? How did you get through it? What did you learn during that process? The third thing that you could potentially reflect on, you're only going to pick one of these if you want, did working through these examples make you curious about what else you could do? Were you able to figure it out? What questions do you still have? What did you figure out how to do on your own? So just pick one of these things. I want these lessons to be things where you stop and think for a minute and you sort of like process and see yourself learning and understanding more. So that's what that sort of like reflection prompt thing is about. Okay. Let's move to the next part of our lesson. I think we've got this one and then one more part, and then that's kind of the end of our lesson for today. So the next part is about quickly entering fractions. So good news, fractions are really, really easy to enter. All you have to do is type the numerator that you want, then type the / key, which is the one right underneath question mark, like next to your right shift button probably, and then finally type your denominator and then hit space to execute. Remember, just like we did with exponents, if your numerator or your denominator is more than one symbol, if there's multiple terms, you're going to need to use parentheses to group those things together before executing that shortcut. Okay, so just like we did on the last one, I typed out 5 examples, 5 things that I want you to type, and I did my example of it on the left. You can type it on the right. So the first one is like, the basic algebra. Slope is rise over run. Okay, great. So we use control equals to bring up our shortcut, and then I just type slope equals, and then rise over run. And when I hit space, it does it for me. Now, some of you might have wondered, do I need to do parentheses? Well, if you did rise over run and then hit space, you'll notice those parentheses actually went away because Word recognized, you were probably just using parentheses to make sure that we grouped things around the division symbol. You're going to learn over time when you do and when you don't need those parentheses. Okay, so the next 4 of these, I'm going to encourage you to pause the video. Again, if you want to come back one at a time to check these out, you can. I'm going to go ahead and walk through what those steps would be. Okay, so I'm doing control equals, control equals to bring up my equation editing menu, and then I'm going to do M equals, I'm going to need about 5 minutes. Sorry, I have a small visitor here. So M equals, now I've got multiple expressions in the numerator, multiple things in the denominator. So I'll need to do parentheses, and then Y subscript 2 minus Y subscript 1. You might have noticed I didn't hit the space bar after each of those. When I hit the minus symbol or when I hit the parentheses, when I hit some of the symbols, it like automatically executes. And that's something that you'll learn as you practice and do this more. So I've got all that in parentheses now, division symbol, slash, parentheses x underscore 2 minus x underscore 1. And then finally I hit the space bar and bam, it executes those and puts the 2 of them together. Okay. Moving on to the next one, there's a lot of stuff up in the numerator there. So I'm going to do parentheses for the whole thing, and then I'll do f parentheses x plus h parentheses minus f parentheses x, like I'm just typing all the things in, and then I close off the parentheses for the whole numerator, and then I do division, h, and I can sort of see, hey, there's this big thing on the top, and then there's like one thing on the bottom. When I hit space, it's going to execute that. Okay. Some people can get kind of worried about big expressions like that. So if you feel more comfortable, you can also use the menu up here to just put in a fraction, and then up in your numerator do x plus h minus f of x all over 8. You can totally do that. I have just personally found that the more I use these shortcuts, the faster I get at doing them. Okay. I'm going to keep moving this forward. Y equals, so I'm going to do x cubed divided by 4 minus 5x squared over 16. Oops, I forgot the 6. Notice you can just use the arrow keys to like move around through these things. When you use the sideways arrow, like I'm just hitting the right sideways, it just goes all the way through the numerator, then all the way through the denominator. Cool. Plus 7x minus 3/17. Great, yay, winning. This last one's a little weird, and if you had trouble with this one, that's okay. And you might have noticed that when you did it, it doesn't look exactly like mine does. So let's see how, I'm going to share with you how I did this one. How I did this one was I brought up my menu, and then I said, well, all right, I've got a numerator and a denominator. The numerator of this thing is actually a fraction in and of itself. So the numerator of this thing is 3x squared minus 4x plus 5 over x minus 3. Like that whole thing is the numerator, right? So that thing, and you're like, whoa, as soon as I hit that parentheses, it turned it into that. It's that divided by 5x minus 17. And you'll notice when I do that, do you see how when you do it this way, the two fraction bars are like the same length? It's almost hard to tell, like, what's the numerator and what's the denominator? And so when I did this one over here, I said, you know what? I'm going to go just right next to that top numerator and put like a few spaces. But then it looks imbalanced, so I go to the other end, and I can't click there, so I'm going to use my sideways arrows to get there, and put like 4 spaces over there too. I feel like that makes it really clear that this is the numerator of the superfraction, and this is the denominator of the superfraction. Whereas in this one, it's a little hard to... Oh, I guess I got rid of the one that was ambiguous. Hopefully that made sense to you. It's not super common that we have to write things like this, but felt like it might be good to put in a weird one here to give you a chance to practice it. The reflection prompts that I have here are exactly the same as they were before. So again, just pick one of these things, pause the video, think about what you've learned, and choose one of these things to write about, to type about in this space down here. And that way I can read it and I can sort of leave you some comments. And I will leave comments, but even if I didn't have time for that, you taking time to reflect is literally a part of the IB program. It's a part of IB learning. We spend time thinking about what we're learning and what our response is to that learning. And so I want you to do that even when we're learning something basic like keyboard commands in Microsoft Word. All right, last part, and this I think is actually going to go a little bit quicker. So you probably noticed there are a ton of different symbols that we use in math. In Word, there were literally 16 menus worth of them. Remember when we brought up that equation menu? Like I checked and counted, like up here at the top, where all these symbols are, there's like this screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's 16. Okay, the 16th menu is like not a full menu. There's 16 menus worth of these things. There's no way that we're going to learn all of those. So let's just learn a few simple, commonly used ones. First of all is the time symbol. You might have noticed that when you're in the equation editor and you're typing an X, it looks like this fancy looking X. It doesn't look like the time symbol. If you want the time symbol, you just type in \times. Okay? Some of you prefer to use the dot for multiplication instead of the X, the time symbol. And so you use \c dot for that, for center dot. The division symbol is /div. For pi, you do \pi. For the square root symbol, you do \sqrt. For a plus or minus symbol, you do plus and then a minus. Are you waving over there? You can see yourself right there if you want to wave. We have a special visitor today. You're being very patient. Thank you. Okay, so these are all the things. You might have wondered, by the way, where did I get those shortcuts from? If you bring up your menu and then hover over something and just wait, and you might not be able to see it in the video, but in your Word, if you hover over any of these symbols, just wait for a second, it'll come up and let you know if there's a shortcut there. And so it's a quick way to learn them. That's how you find them. Learning them comes by practicing them. Just like I've done before, I have 5 examples here. And so, pause the video, type these things out, and then we'll do our reflection, then we'll be done with the lesson for today. So for the first one, really simple, 8 equals 56. Division was \div, space, and then 7. Great, yay, we did it. For this next one, this is the formula for the volume of a sphere. So we bring up our menu, capital V equals 4/3, and then I'm going to do space to execute that, \times to bring up this. I don't think you can, oh, look at that. When you do another backslash, it executes for you. So if you're going into another symbol, you can just keep typing these things. But here, I can't just type R because timeser is not a shortcut. So I have to do space after the times, and then R:3 space to execute that. Okay. For this next one, we're doing square roots. So in my equation menu, \sqrt, and then I do a space to bring this thing up. And you'll notice it's a really short, the radical symbol is really short. If you just type an X and then hit space, it'll put that thing underneath the square root. But over here, when I do sqrt space, when I do x cubed, if I go -4x, you'll notice, oh, bummer, it's going to break the square root right there. If you want to fit more things underneath the square root, surprise, surprise, you need to use parentheses. So I can do x cubed -4x plus 2, and then when I close this and finally hit space, it'll extend that square root symbol to being over everything that's underneath it. Okay. For a bit of practice using the plus or minus symbol, we could do, say the length of something is 5 centimeters plus or minus, and if you just type a plus and then a minus, it'll immediately put it into a plus or minus. 3 millimeters, maybe that's how you'd indicate like an error bar or something like that. And then the last one here, everyone's favorite, the quadratic equation. We can type it now. This might be another one of those places where you feel more comfortable starting out by establishing a major fraction and then building things around it. -b plus or minus \sqrt parentheses b squared minus 4ac parentheses. Then we hit our space and it like bam does that. And then you put a 2a on the bottom. Sometimes there's a part of me that really likes to see the magic, and so I won't use that fraction thing. So sometimes I'll do these like this. Parentheses for the numerator, -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac parentheses all over 2a. And it's just fun at the end when you hit space to see it go like bam and like everything like fits into the right spots. It's just a bummer when you hit space at the end and it doesn't look the way you want and you have to go back and fix it. Anyway. So, like I said, we were almost done. Reflection, same reflection prompts. So pause the video, think about these symbol things that we just did, and choose one of these reflection prompts to go through. I'm going to scroll down and make sure. Nope. That was all of what I had. So I really hope that this made sense to you. If you have questions or if there's some part about it that's confusing, I hope that you'll reach out and you'll let me know either via email or by making a comment on this document when you turn in your notes. Yeah, so again, I hope that made sense, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson and in class. Have a great day.